What is the point of announcing all the cutbacks and the sacking of lower level people to then just do this? Hi, yeah, it's me again, and we've seen recently that BBC are making loads of cutbacks, sacking off loads of staff, changing BBC News about a lot, probably for the worse, but then could BBC News get any worse is the question. And they're really going to damage their local radio output, which has upset more people than I think they thought it would. So they're trying to make all these cutbacks, save all this money, which means this headline on the BBC's own media centre makes 0 sense to me whatsoever. Have a look. BBC creates 7 new assistant commissioner roles across the UK. Underscoring the BBC's commitment to nurturing new talent, the BBC has announced the next phase of its assistant commissioner programme with the creation of 7 new roles. With a focus on increasing representation from the nations and regions and candidates who are deaf, disabled and or neurodivergent. Do you really need that? Do you really need that? Yeah, alright, you need more deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people in the BBC. Do you need to create 7 assistant commissioner roles for that? That doesn't sound like a low-level job to me. Assistant commissioner. You've got to be thinking, what, 80 grand a year? 70, 80 grand a year? Maybe more for someone in that position. So they're closing down local radio buildings and sacking off many of the staff from them to make a bit of savings. But this is going to cost them a lot more than the savings that they've made. So it makes no sense at all. No sense at all. You're telling me people, you don't already have assistant commissioners in the UK that could, diversify a little bit and work harder to work with deaf, disabled and neurodivergent people, and more so in the nations and regions. You don't already have that. No, you've got to appoint 7 new people. It makes no sense. How can you announce all these cutbacks and then make up a load of nonsense jobs like this? You're not cutting back, are you? These new roles demonstrate our commitment to growing and developing new talent and enhancing our representation across the UK. Well, you had loads of representation around the UK in your local radio, didn't you? But you're cutting that. You're cutting that to make up these nonsense, not required jobs. They will play an important role in spotting and nurturing ideas that will bring viewers high-impact stories that reflect their lives wherever they live. Also, again, sounds like what local radio used to do. Local radio used to get all the play on the local stories, anything local. That's what local radio does and local papers do. They're desperate for local stories. So they'll fish out anything they can fish out. And sometimes you get these ones that escalate up. There's loads of little local paper stories that make it to the nationals, right? And it's the same with local TV and local radio. Something good, it makes its way up the chain to be national. If you want to go grassroots and start working in local areas to find out high impact stories to reflect lives wherever they live, then you start at the bottom with local radio. This is going to cost more than the changes you're making to local radio. When they could do this job, and they'd be happy to do it because they'd get more stories out of it as well, wouldn't they? The whole thing makes no sense. But that's the BBC all over. The BBC there doesn't seem to be any clear direction of what they want to do. We want to save money, we want to spend money. What are you doing? We're going to cut this, we're going to grow this. You've got a deficit of 300 million quid a year from your 3.7 billion you get from licence fees, which is absolutely ridiculous. If you can't manage that amount of money, you need to get some people in that can manage that amount of money. The change needs to come at the top, not with nonsense like this. You need to change the top to manage the money better. Because this is just complete and utter nonsense. Complete and utter nonsense. Every day I see stories from the BBC that just let me know that they've got no idea what's going on. There was one on here the other day on the BBC Media Centre where they've appointed their first ever head of BBC orchestras. I forget at the minute how many orchestras the BBC have. I think it's 6. But I have filed a Freedom of Information request over this, and when I get the answer back for what I want to talk about, I will bring you a video about it. But it just goes to show how out of touch they are. They don't care that it's your 159 quid a year. They're just spunking on nonsense, absolutely wasting it. They don't care because that's not the world these people live in. It's the world we live in, where we would like that 159 quid a year to put towards our energy bills, which are an absolute joke. But that's not the world that they live in, because it doesn't matter what they do or what they make or who they appoint. they're still going to get 3.7 billion quid a year from license fees because they don't have to work for it. That's why they live in a different world. Let me know what you think about this down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, because that way, hopefully, I'll see you in another video again soon. Ta-da.